Today, lead follow-up. So you guys have been learning about generating leads, right? It's exciting.
I'm just gonna take a little picture.
Hey, everybody on Zoom, if you guys need to chime in, feel free to chime in.
Yeah, we think we have it so you guys can talk
I think
to
I
us.
can hear you, but if not, then I don't know how you're gonna tell me. You're gonna chat it. Okay, so today we're gonna talk about following up with leads. There we go. This is number 11 on our Ignite group, and we're almost done. We're over
You guys
halfway.
were halfway. That's great.
That's exciting. Today's agenda, we're going to learn lead conversion. We're going to learn how to convert a lead to an appointment, improve our conversion rate. We're going to do a little recap and ahas, and we're not going to go through the daily success systems because we are doing Ignite on speed, which means instead of this being a 4-hour course each day where you lead gen with it, you're lead genning on your own. Does somebody want to read this quote for me?
The effort you give in converting leads must match the effort you give to generating them.
Yes, very true. Why do you guys think both activities are important and need the same amount of time? That's a shift. That's a quote from Gary Keller in the Shift book, by the way, which is this book. Great book if you have not read it. This is just a bound version. Any ideas why it's just as important to give the same amount of time and effort into generating leads as following up with them? Anybody have any ideas? Yeah, so we can generate. I know a lot of people who generate a lot of leads. And if they're not like a hot, ready to go lead right now, then they stop following up with them. Oh. And that is future money, right? Is everybody that you're talk to going to be ready to buy or sell a house right now today? No, definitely not. Did you think so far? No. Yeah. So everybody's going to be ready the minute that you talk to them. I had a broker once who used the example of, she said, Russie, if you talk to someone today and they wrote you a check for like the average commission at the time, you guys, when I started was like $3,000. It's now over 12,000 is the average commission. So I have to sell a lot more houses than you guys will have to. But she said, if somebody wrote you a check today and gave it to you, but it was dated for 2 years from now, but the deal was you had to once a quarter, just like check in on the check. You had to know where it was. You had to check in with them. You had to say, hey, how's everything going? Would that be something that you would pay attention to? And I was like, well, yeah, obviously, right? So I want you to put that in your brain of like a $12,000. If you had a $12,000 check that was dated for 12 months from now, would you pay attention to where that check was? Would you make sure you knew where it was and that you were nurturing it? You had to check in on it. You had to look at it at least once a month to be able to cash it one day. Right. So I always think of it like that. When you have a lead right now, maybe a paycheck now, and maybe a paycheck 12 months from now, it may never, that specific person may never be in a real estate transaction with you, but they could be the source of referrals for you for years. One of my best referrers was a deal that like crashed and burned hard, like the worst transaction I ever had. Crashed. They weren't able to purchase for a couple of years after that transaction crashed and burned. But I got a ton of leads from that person in the meantime, just because of the way that I handled the situation throughout it. So you're going to look at your book. So you guys, it looks like everyone has maybe the digital book. So you're going to have, this is the page that you should be on if you're following along in the book, which is the lead conversion process. It's going to look a little bit like this. This is just giving some average conversion rates within the different industries. The highest conversion rate is auto and professional services, which is interesting. Real estate is about 2.4, which is right along there with travel. So a lot of leads come in, not a lot of conversion is always happening. So consistently getting every possible appointment from the lead you generate isn't complicated, but it requires preparation, practice, and purposeful action, which is also from the Shift book. So you should have a page like this in your guide that has this diagram on it. So when you're converting your lead to an appointment, it starts at the top of the model with capture. So if you have a funnel, did you guys get these? I'm going to erase. You can just subscribe to the calendar and you'll see those on there. Also, the call that Ken was talking about was on Mondays. Every day of the week, our leadership team does a huddle, but on Mondays, we invite anybody from our office and wants to come to a power up huddle, it's on Mondays at 9 a.m. So at the very top, and I always think of your lead as a little funnel, and this is where you're capturing the leads. Right, so all these leads are flowing in here. Got all these leads in here. Then you've got to connect with the lead. So this first part that you guys, I believe you've already talked about is lead generation, right? So all those leads are coming in and you're capturing the leads. So starts at the top of that model, but you also have to capture the correct information to be able to reconnect with them. What do you think some of the things would be important to capture? To be able to reconnect with them?
We need their phone number.
Phone number, that's a good way, right? That's a
I'll
good
be
way
able
to
to
contact
contact them.
people.
Or
Yes,
email, I guess.
Socials?
yeah, for sure. You should ask them for that.
Yeah. Probably.
No, probably nobody's gonna give you your social security. Oh, social media. Pretty funny, and I was like, I don't think anyone's gonna give you that. Anybody's gonna give you that, but you should try.
Yeah,
Then you never know. Maybe there's like my Nigerian prince somewhere
right.
that we can get, and we just need to send a little bit of money to.
Yeah.
Right, so like that's a great way, social. So the idea is you're capturing all the leads and then you're gonna connect with them somehow. The reasons for connection is we're trying to close for an appointment. Right, so for some reason, this lead was generated, regardless of how you generated it. And we now need to convert them from just a name and some type of contact information. And our goal is to connect with them to result in an appointment. And then sometimes they're not ready, so you connect with them. And best case scenario, they're gonna need an appointment right now, which is your closed bucket. And this is closed to an appointment, because we gotta have an appointment in order to get a contract signed. Sometimes it goes over here to cultivate. Right? And then this is later on down the road, but eventually they're already captured, you've connected. And this is gonna be the part of the cycle that they live in for a while, right? Because you're gonna be connected with them. You're gonna continue cultivating that relationship until all of a sudden they have a need again, and then we're gonna meet with them again, right? So this part of the bucket really kind of stays intact, but you've already captured their information at some point along the way. Okay, so there's a couple different types of business: possible business, probable business, and profitable business. So when the lead first comes in, it's in this bucket. It's possible business. That's somebody that you could possibly at some point do a transaction with. Then you're converting them into probable business. So that means we've now had a conversation. We're going to talk about some of those things that you would have a conversation around, but we're going to have a conversation with them. And we're going to determine that they're probable business, right, at that point. And then they become a profitable business. So it starts out as just the lead. It's possible. Then we start having conversations with them. We're connecting with them. Now it's probable. And then that last bucket is going to be when it's profitable. And that's when we're actually closing a transaction. So converting the lead has a lot of importance for that reason, because we've got to be able to move them through those things. I don't think this is going to give us a section for ahas, but I don't think we really need any ahas yet, right? Any ahas? I'm like, I've got 30 minutes, a little over 30 minutes. So we're going to talk to how to convert a lead to an appointment. So captured is defined as collecting the minimum amount of valid contact information of a potential buyer or seller. So what are some of the ways that we could go about getting a way to get a hold of them? So we need their email. Social media is a great idea. Phone number is another great one. How would we collect? I'm gonna move this. What are some of the ways that what are some of the methods of capturing their information?
Open house sign-in sheets.
Open house sign-in sheets. Great example, Jason. What else? Door knocking. How do you collect their information if you're door knocking? Tell me.
You have to connect on some common point, like they're
Right.
gonna sell in 3 months. Oh, awesome.
Yeah.
It'd be great to sit down and have a conversation about what that's gonna look like.
Yeah. I love that. Door knocking can be especially a great way to capture leads if you're door knocking for, say, an open house or a new listing in the area and you're bringing some awareness to it. When I used to do a lot of open houses, the thing that I would ask at the door, I would tell them I'm doing an open house. You probably noticed your neighbor's house for sale or the house a couple blocks over for sale. I'm doing an open house there on Saturday. One of the things we've noticed is typically when one house in the neighborhood goes up, there's 2 to 3 within the next 6 months that also go up for sale. Is that you? Or is that someone else in your neighborhood? That was the script I used all the time. And they kind of were like, oh, well, gosh, I have been thinking about it, or they haven't, or whatever. And then the other way that I would get their information is, do you want me to follow up with you and let you know how the open house goes and let you know how much interest we have in this neighborhood specifically? So yeah, knowing how to have the conversation, that's a great way to have it. Responses to social media or online ads. So if you guys are running online ads, people are going to respond to you. Or oftentimes they may even just see something that you're posting about real estate. This happens to me, where they'll see that I posted something and you'll get a direct message from somebody, maybe, or they'll comment in the comments section. That's a way you can be capturing their information, right? How else would we capture it?
I would just have conversations with people and like we'll be talking about something and I'll be like, oh, let me get your number so like we can catch up or something.
Yeah, that's perfect. So when you're capturing, it's important to know what you're going to say before the conversation. In your participant guide, there is this page. It's like you see which page you're looking at. But there's questions like, if I need to contact you, what would that number be? If I found exactly what you're looking for, how would I contact you? If I found out the information you're wanting, how would you like me to get it to you? So those are a couple of ways that you can get it. So conversations are obviously important. For this piece, you've got to have some type of a system in place. So those of you that are at KW, we have Command, which is a CRM. That's going to give you a place to capture their information. So if you're running an online ad, for example, and Ken clicks on my ad, it's going to pop him over to some information about the property, but it's going to ask him his name, his phone number, his email, and then that's going to drop directly into my CRM. It's going to notify me that I have a new lead on that, right? And so that's already there. And so if it's missing some information, so let's say I just have an email and a name, I can send some information and ask those questions of like, hey, I'd love to give you a call to find out exactly what you're looking for. Would you mind sharing your number with me? Or you might have their number, but not an email. You're going to want to try to get those things and ask them in that way. So your leads may not always be ready for an appointment, which is when they're going to go into a nurture phase, right? So first we're just capturing the lead, then they're going to go into a nurture phase. We're not going to do these exercises right now, but here's what I'm going to challenge you to do is it's easy to come into a class and take a bunch of notes and then do nothing with them, or to learn something and then don't do anything with it also. So take the time, there's an exercise on this page that essentially is saying, what are you doing right now? How are you currently capturing leads? So what does anybody want to share what they're doing right now to capture leads already? Share.
Well, I do way too much in like my school community, PTA, and I'm also like doing a lot, everybody knows now. But in that way, like I'll have conversations with people I haven't seen in a minute and they'll be like, what are you doing? And I'll be like, I'm in real estate now. And I just start into that. And I'm like, so if you ever need anything, please let me know. And then like there's one lady I didn't have her number. We were talking and I knew we had a book in common. So I was talking about the book and I was like, let me get your number. Like, let me get your information. I'm in real estate. And then she also told me she's moving next summer. That's one that I'm trying to like, what do I do?
Yeah.
And that ended up like, she knows I'm in real estate. Now I'm like, okay, how do I follow up? We have this in common. So I'm generating leads that way a little bit right now. And I got back into social media. I quit forever, got back on. It's been great though, because I'm seeing people I haven't seen for years, having conversations with people.
Yeah.
And it's like a catch up thing. Like, what are you doing? I'm in real estate now.
Yeah.
I would love to help you.
And the nice
That's
thing
what I'm
about
doing.
being in real estate in a market that I think that everybody could agree is interesting, however you want to label it, it's an interesting market. Everybody wants to know, like they're going to ask you the question. The minute that they know you're in real estate, they don't even, you're not going to have to like beg them to talk to them about the market. They're going to want to know from you. Like you're going to probably find times in your life where you're like, let's maybe not talk about real estate today. Right? But they're going to ask you about it. So then when you know how you're capturing leads, then I want you to take the time to figure out what information are you collecting about the lead? Now, at a minimum, we use a thing called NAPE, and you guys have maybe already seen this in another class, but as a reminder,
Right, and then also the home anniversary.
Yep, so NAPE
All
stands
this
for
stuff,
name,
right.
address, phone number, and email. Now, those are the minimums that you need. A couple of other great things is birthdays. That's a great way to contact somebody, right? Happy birthday, that's not hard. Birthdays, if they already own a home anniversaries, or if you sell a home to somebody, their home anniversary. The neighborhood they're living in, you'll have that from their address, but you can set them up on a neighborhood search. Neighborhood. What other things would be important to know about people? Kids, pets, jobs. The Ford conversations. Does everyone remember what Ford
Future
means?
goals, like if
future
they're in a
goals.
townhome, like where do you want to live? Like where, if you could buy a house anywhere, where would it be? Where, kind of their future stuff.
Future goals, love it. Yeah, so all of those things, now you just have to decide like what information is important for you to collect. And by the way, you don't have to collect the same information that Angeline's gonna collect. You could say like, I actually don't care about people's birthdays. I don't need that information because I'm not gonna celebrate it. If you're not gonna do anything with it, you don't need it, great, you don't have to collect it. What information are you currently collecting? And then think on that of what could you collect? And then what are your current lead categories or tags? Now, I know some of you are newer in the brokerage or newer to KW. If you'll start out tagging your people in some way that makes sense to you and don't overcomplicate it, it makes it so much easier to quickly filter. So my tags have gotten a little more complicated, but in the beginning, it was literally A+. What that meant is they've bought from me, they've done multiple transactions with me, or they've bought and referred to me, right? So still multiple transactions. A was that they've bought or sold with me or referred to me. B was we have a good relationship, they're engaging in things, they would buy or sell from me, but the opportunity hasn't come up yet. C is I know them, they're responsive, but they're not really engaging. I don't know what that's going to look like. D is like an online lead that I got that really hasn't engaged. Now, the only reason that I did it that way is because quickly I can filter A+, for example. If I'm going to do a VIP event that I'm only inviting A+ people to, I can quickly filter that way. Because I really don't want my Ds to get an invitation to something that's going to cost me a lot of money. I want that to be a more special, intimate event, right? So that's a quick way to do that. So I would just suggest, and your lead categories can be buyer, seller, online lead. It can be a year, 2025, buyer, seller, right? So you can put multiple tags for people, but as you're doing it, think through what are the ways you would want to categorize people in your database. So anybody that's SOI to me, so I have family members that I've done transactions with and that I haven't, but if I'm doing like an Easter egg hunt, for example, everybody's invited to that, the more the merrier. I can quickly just filter through SOI. Now I know that those aren't maybe agent connections or they've moved out of state or anything like that. They're an SOI, they're going to get an invite to that. So there's different ways that you're going to want to categorize that. So think about how you're currently doing it and then what can you do to improve your current capture systems. So that's a little activity. You're going to do that on your own after class. So this would, we already kind of talked through this. Your connection best practices. So when you're connecting with people, you need to figure out a way to put your value proposition embedded into your conversation. If your conversation only looks like this every time you call them, hey, Ken, it's Rusty again. Do you need to buy, sell, or invest in real estate? Oh, you don't? Do you know anyone who wants to buy, sell, or invest in real estate? What about your church, your neighborhood, your family members, right? If that's the only thing I'm ever calling Ken about, am I of value to Ken? No, Ken's gonna block me at that point, right? He doesn't want to talk to me and only get the question of that. So how are you having a conversation that you're embedding your value proposition? One thing that I think is great right now in Connection is think about the questions that are commonly being asked in this industry. And it's a great conversation starter to say, hey, Sal, it's Rusty. I know you always are wanting to stay on top of the trends in the market. Here's what most people are asking me right now, right? So I'm bringing value as the real estate expert. They have a value proposition from me. You want to role play and practice these conversations. Every single morning at 8:59 in this room, Dalton Clark has put together a script practice and role. So you're learning how to have conversations. It is easier to practice with your peers, where you can kind of screw up with your peers and laugh about it and you get tongue-tied. It's easier because when you're first making calls, you're probably going to be a little bit nervous, right? So make sure that you're role playing and practicing. That's really important. And then know the outcome you want from a conversation before starting. So if you're calling for something specific, know what you want that outcome to look like. If the outcome of the conversation is you want an appointment with them, those are the kind of questions you should be asking that would lead to you being able to get an appointment with them, right? So have an outcome in mind. Maybe it's that they're not ready to meet now, but you want to be able to send them more information. So you're going to get their permission to send them a link to your app. Or you're going to get their permission to send you some statistics on what happened in the real estate market in 2020. Maybe they want some value pulled on their house. Whatever it is, have an outcome in mind before you start the conversation, and then use those questions to lead the conversation. So in your participant guide, again, you're going to have these six, you're going to have these 6 connecting questions. Questions are, so connecting is more than just small talk. So your communication should seek to answer the basic questions like, who are they? So one of the examples of this is like, hey, if you don't mind, let's just back up a little bit. Tell me a little bit about yourself, right? Sometimes we get instantly into business mode, and if we can connect with them on something that we have in common, that's going to be an easier way to get the connecting questions going. What do they want, or what do they need to do? So for example, they're going to tell yourself you're looking for personal information. By the way, how I take notes on this, because I do think that it is really like, this is a relationship business. And so in my contact card of that person, if you're using Command, you can do it through your app, but you can just put notes right in there. There's a notes section. You can put notes. So I'll put like 2 dogs, names are, 1 kid, divorce, like whatever it is, I'll put little notes in there. It helps me jog my memory. Maybe they're not ready to buy something right now, but maybe down the road they're going to, and they're going to pop up in my quarterly calls, which is part of my connection and touch follow-ups. So if I have that information in there, I'm not going to look like an idiot when I'm like, how are things, how's your wife doing? And they're like, oh, well, we got divorced 6 months ago. Cool story. And I told you that last time we were talking, right? So if you make notes, you won't forget about things like that. So what do they want or need to do? The example of that would be, thanks for sharing that. Now, if you would, please tell me about what you're wanting to do. So the objection of this is you're beginning to assess their wants, their needs, and their current plans. If this is a lead that you've captured in some way, you're not calling someone in your SOI, this is like an online lead, or you met them at an open house or whatever it is, you need to start trying to figure out what it is they want to do, right? And historically, people are not just like open books when they come into, Jason, you do a ton of open houses. Do people just come in and go, here's my list of everything I want. Where do I sign my agency agreement? Let's go. No, you got to kind of work it.
Yeah. And people will actually know that if you ask the right questions, they'll be interested in sharing, so.
For sure.
How to ask the right questions. That's
I
very
don't know
good.
how to do that. I found that broke, but once this lady did all this, it was weird. We were at this book fair or something, and this lady, she was really closed off. She has like 4 kids. And we're sitting there chatting, and somebody said something about her dog, and she lit up, and she pulled out her phone. She was showing pictures, and then now she's like one of my contacts, and I'm like, oh my gosh, the dog is what broke the barrier.
So finding that common ground is really critical. People want to know that you care about them, that they're just not a number to you for sure.
Yeah, in an open house, you can just, like, what are they looking for in a house? Like,
Yeah.
what if in your dream home, what do you need? Like in a big garage or a master bedroom that's with a king bed, like, and then just focus on that, dig down
And if you listen to people throughout, like open house is a great example of this. If you listen to what people are saying to you, you'll start to pick up on things. Oh, you know what I heard you mention a couple different times was that you felt like this master bedroom or this owner suite was a little too small. Tell me a little bit, like, what's important to you in that? Is it a king bed? Is it that you need a walk-in closet? Do you need a separate shoe closet? What's it going to be that's important to them? So the next question is, where do they want or need to do it? So thanks for sharing that. Now, if you could, would you share to me where you're thinking of moving? Again, this is great. Like maybe they clicked on an ad for a house in Layton, Utah. Hey, I noticed that actually the way I got in contact with you was a listing we have in Layton. Is that your preferred area? Or is there somewhere else that maybe you're thinking of moving to? So where do they want to do it or need to do it? Sometimes there's things within their situation. Like I've had people that tell me like, hey, per my divorce decree, I can't move more than 25 miles from my ex-spouse, right? So things like that, you're just asking questions. That's important, right? I've had people that I sold houses to that had to be within so many minutes of a hospital that they worked at. Because they were on call, and so they had to be able to be at that hospital within like 14 minutes or something. That's gonna limit their search area, right? So getting an idea of where they want or need to be. Why do they want or need to do it? So now, another example in your book is thanks for sharing that. Now, if you can, will you share with me why you're making this move? Right? Because there might be something specific. Oh, we need a bigger house. We need to downsize. We want a different monthly payment. We just moved to the area. We've been renting and we're tired of being renters. Whatever it is, there's a reason why people are moving. So if you can try to get to that, then when is the next one? Oh, sorry, I think I'm not through this. When do they want or need to do it? So is this something that they need to do in 30 days, as quick as possible? Or is this something where they don't want to do anything till next year? I've had times where they had just signed a new lease on the house that they're renting and they're going to be 12 months out. Well, that's a different conversation. Am I going to push for an appointment where I'm going to try to get an agency agreement signed with someone who's 12 months out from purchasing a home? No, but I'm going to make sure that I'm sending them information. I'll usually say like, hey, a couple things that I think are important when they're that far out. I'm like, hey, would you mind if I just send you over a quick email with just some things to be aware of over the next 12 months that you probably need to know if you're getting ready to purchase in 12 months. By the way, you could also ask, like, have you thought about if it makes sense maybe it might make sense for them to cancel their lease and move sooner, right? Like, you never know what that looks like. So any time frame they give you, I always tell people, like, cut it in half and make sure you're following up. So if they tell me 6 months, I'm like, you're going to be ready in 90 days. Even if they have a lease, they're still probably going to be ready to start looking in 90 days. Right? So pay attention to those things. And then how do they plan to do it? So the how they plan to do it, thanks for sharing that. Now, if you can, Lee, please share with me what you've already done to plan for this. So you're assessing what they've done, their expectations, and perhaps if they've already had experience with it, right? Well, how do they plan to do it? Well, we're going to sell our house. Ding, ding, ding. Now I'm a listing and a seller, or a listing and a buyer, right? They have to sell their house to be able to purchase this one. Maybe they're waiting because somebody told them, somebody told my neighbor a year and a half ago that they should wait for the market to come back to list their house. That was stupid advice. They should have listed it instead of letting it sit vacant for a year. Their value's actually gone down based on what their house looks like, right? So it will give you some information on how they plan to do it. This might be things like, are you planning to purchase the property with cash, or are you going to need a loan? By the way, people get so weird about asking about the finances of it. I don't even ever, like, I don't assume they have to get a loan. I ask them, are you going to be purchasing with cash, or are you going to need a loan? Oh, you're going to need a loan? Awesome. Have you already connected with a lender, or can I connect you? Oftentimes you'll get people saying, oh, well, I'm not going to buy for 12 months or 18 months or whatever. Do you know how it is so critical that you actually start talking to a lender now? They're going to give you some tips and tricks that will help you be in a better position to buy at the time that you're ready. Also, then if there's anything we need to be aware of, we've had people that needed to file taxes before. You have people that need to pay off debt. You might have people that need to restructure some debt. Whatever it is, you're going to get a better idea of what they need to do. Make sure you practice these conversations. It is important. Also, everybody's business is a little different. So you're going to want to learn how these conversations flow for you and what's important to you. There is some sample connection questions for both buyers and sellers on this page. If you just get good at kind of knowing what those are and what they look like, it'll be easier for you. Practice these conversations. I'm going to just keep telling you that, to practice the conversations, because it matters. Practice actually sitting down with someone and going through a contract that you would ask them to sign. I could literally go through the buyer's agency contract and the listing agreement with my eyes shut and the Repsy with my eyes closed. Why? Because I've practiced a lot. People walk out of a conversation with me knowing what they're signing and why they're signing it, right? So if you practice those conversations, it makes a huge difference. Also, don't forget the forward conversation. So family, occupation, recreation, dreams. If you know a little bit about them, it's going to make it easier. If anybody knows me, they know that at some point I'm going to have a house on the beach. I want to live on a beach about 6 months out of the year is my plan. And so I have friends that are realtors in Florida that will send me things all the time. Right. And I love that. But you know what that means? Not only, yeah, of course they want me to buy a house with them, but they remembered something about my dreams. Right. That was a forward conversation. So remember the forward conversation. That's an easy way to bring those in. So those are going to be some things that you find. Also, make sure you document. this. You could literally print this page out. There are some other ones like in the Ignite toolkit that when you're, I think your coaching agent will get these. But there's actually like a little guide. There's a checklist of questions. If it's printing it out, if you're digital, have a digital copy that you can type on or write on your iPad, or just have these like a quick copy and paste that you can add into the notes section of their contact. If you take notes of this, and I'll even say, like, if I'm sitting down with someone, I'm like, I'm just gonna take a couple quick notes. Is that okay? I would much rather take some notes and know what you're looking at, and then it will re-jog your memory when you're doing that. So determine where you're gonna keep those notes and what you're gonna do for them. If there are key factors that I need to know about people or that I wanna remember about people, I will, in the contact of them on my phone, I have an iPhone. So for the non-iPhone users, I don't know how you're gonna do it, but I'm sure there's a way. You could probably ask my husband because he refuses to change the iPhone. I don't know how to do it, but there's probably a way to put contacts or comments in their contact. Like I'll actually put comments in the contact of someone because that helps me even as I'm pulling my phone up to call them, I can look at that contact comments and I'm like, oh yeah, you know, they got a new puppy 6 weeks ago, ask about the puppy and it's gonna help you with those things. So I do it there. I also do it in Command. The only other thing I'll remind you of, if you're sharing contact with somebody, so let's say that I'm sharing a contact of somebody for some reason, make sure to unclick the comments section, or you're gonna send your comments to whoever you're sharing it with too. But you can, again, iPhone, I don't know about anything else. You can unclick your comments, like you can only share name, phone number, and business or whatever if you want to. Any questions or ahas before we move on?
Why do you want to live on the beach?
Oh, gosh, because it's my soul
Why
just
would
feels
you
like it's
not?
there.
Where, like, which
Better-
beach?
That was the next question on the thing.
So I'll show you a little bit.
I was gonna say, where, what?
I'll draw a little
Where?
picture. So here's Florida.
Okay, cool.
And then there's like Alabama and all this is all on here.
Yeah.
And there's a place right here. Clearwater's the one most people know about because it's a pretty common. That's a little too populated because I want to grow old and leathery on a beach. And so if you just go, boop, 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 there's a little place like Indian Rocks is great. Madeira down here is kind of busy, but if you keep going down like this whole Gulf side,
There you go.
is where I love it. It's Caribbean-esque, but I'm still in the US.
You have to ask, because Florida and Oregon, those are two different.
They're totally different.
Yeah.
And I want a warm beach, not a cold
Puerto
beach.
Rico's too far,
Probably,
but you can't drive there really.
I
Maybe
can't
that's part
drive
of it.
there. I don't know that I would drive to Florida, but you know, you never know. My kids are gonna be doing.
Yeah,
it. I
possible.
want them to be there. Yeah. So yeah, that's why I wanna go there. And I'm gonna have a cabin too, that I wanna be snowed in sometimes in the winter. Okay. So, using the goal in the conversion model.
I love it.
Is to immediate capture, connect, and close. So the idea is that you're gonna capture, connect, and close. You can't know or predict when they're gonna come to decision, but if you're reconnecting in a systematic way, you'll have a great chance of being there when they do. That's when you'll be able to close for an appointment. That's also from Shift. So this is where the cultivate piece comes in. In an ideal world, the lead's gonna come in. You're gonna call them. You're gonna instantly connect with them. They're gonna love you. They're gonna be like, when can we meet? And you're gonna bring them in and you're gonna sign an agreement and then you're gonna close and everybody's gonna be so happy. And then you're just gonna continue cultivating that lead. That doesn't happen all the time. You're gonna have to nurture and cultivate the lead sometimes. So when you're using lead conversion, it's immediately gonna move from there. And you've got to keep your mind share. So I know you guys have already talked about, and I'm trying to pay attention to time. Holy crap.
Take your time.
I know you guys, I'm like, gosh, talk so fast. I know you guys have already talked about systems, 19 to connect, 36 touch, all those types of systems. Whatever the system is, the whole point of it is that you have reasons that you're staying top of mind. It's mind share, right? If I say right now, something about soda, most people are going to picture a visual of what their favorite soda is, whether it's Coke, Pepsi, Swig, whatever it is. When you think of soda, that's what you're thinking of. That means that particular soda brand has the most mind share in your brain. You want to be like that with real estate, so that if somebody says real estate, they picture you with your great business card photo. You want them to remember and think, oh, that means you have mind share with them. So the idea of the touch systems is because no matter how great we are, nobody can stay in touch with that many people all the time. You will think you're going to remember to call them. You won't. Even with a great system, there's going to be times where you go, oh shit. I said I was going to call you. Sal is one of my clients, so he knows this is true. oh, I said I was gonna call you and I didn't, so now I am the next day calling you, right? So you've got to have a system, and the idea of the system is maybe that neighborhood report isn't anything like life-changing or earth-shattering that they need to know right now, but they see your photo and they're like, oh yeah, Russ using real estate. You know, you really are keeping a lot of mind share with your people when they're calling you and saying, oh gosh, I need to replace my HVAC. Who do you recommend? They're thinking of you. You want everything within their real estate world to think of, I got to talk to my realtor about that. You want that to be the go-to. You want them to call you, not the plumber, when they have a leak, because you want to connect them. You want to be the connector of anything related to their real estate world. Okay. So Mindshare is going to help you do that. So you can't predict when or where. This goes back to the idea of if somebody wrote you a $12,000 check today, but you had to send an email that automatically would get sent every month or every twice a month, and every quarter you had to give them a call, would you do that for $12,000 12 months from now? Of course you would, right? Especially if it can be easy. So just make sure that you have systems. A lot of times agents struggle during the cultivation phase because when you're first talking and connecting with them, you have a great connection, it stays top of mind, you're ready to roll with it. And then suddenly you're like, it's moving on, it's moving on, it's moving on. There's more time from it. It's harder to connect. So make sure that you stay connected to people. And then you're just going to be, everybody's been there, and myself included, you're going to be on the other side of something one time where you're going to be scrolling through social media and someone that you talked to 3 months ago is going to post that they just bought a house, and you're I did not do a good enough job of staying in touch with them. So the systems are really critical. Make sure that you're using those. And then you're going to look at your participant guide on looks like this. Going for the close. So when you're asking for your appointment, so there's a bunch of different closes that are described in here. So we're past the cultivate. We're going to try and close for an appointment at this point. So this is going to give you, it's when you're asking for the appointment. So you're concluding one conversation to see if a new one that can take place. It's your responsibility to ask for the appointment. I see a lot of agents that they consider their conversations, they're tracking their conversations, and they're never converting to an appointment. And we're like, gosh, on average, about 35 to 40 conversations should be getting you an appointment. You had 200 last week and no appointment. Let's talk about what your conversations look like. And their conversations are only the Ford conversation, or they're only whatever. They're never actually asking for business. So you have to make sure that that is your responsibility to ask for the appointment. Just like the touches, you need to stay in emotional proximity with them. So there's a couple ways you can ask for the close. You can do it in a text message. You can do it in an email. You can do it in a phone call, or you can do it in person. What do you think is most effective? Who says A? Raise your hand. Who says it's most effective in a text message? What about in an email? Is that the most effective way to ask for an appointment? Email's so easy to ignore, right? On a phone call. I think that's a pretty good way to keep in touch with people.
But
And in person.
one phone call, two text is 3 and emails.
For sure, right? Because text and emails are the least effective, especially text right now. I feel like it's almost like becoming the new email spam is texting. So if you are going to text, I would say like, keep it really specific, right? Like, hey, it was great. Jason, thank you so much for coming by my house. My thing at 123 Main Street. I'd love to set up a time to talk with you further. Do you have time this day or this day?
Do people really do that? If they have their phone number, why don't they call them? Like, the only time I can imagine doing that is if the only way that I have a contact with them is on Facebook and I'm using Messenger.
Yeah.
It's the only time I can imagine sending them a message like that.
So it depends, right? Because some people prefer text. So I would say some of your qualifying questions too would be, and that one actually wasn't on here, but I always like to ask people, how's the best way for me to communicate with you? Do you like a phone call? Do you prefer a text? Do you want me to email you? And if they say email, I'm going to say, okay, I'm going to mark that as your preferred message.
See, but
But every once in a while, I'm still going to call you.
But that's like that's like having, okay, that's like being vulnerable with someone that you're dating and doing it via text messages. That lets them like ignore it and then
Yeah.
all these other things. So
Yes,
if they say, I prefer this for that, if I'm asking for something,
Asking for an
I'm going to
appointment.
call them. I'm going to call
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's great. And again, everybody's going to do business a little differently. And it's also about knowing who your target audience is, right? I have like, Kaylee Miller is an agent in our office. And a great example is like, if I call Kaylee, because I know Kaylee's a texter, if I call her, she's like, I'm in trouble. Or if she calls me, I'm like, oh man, she needs something right now, because she's a texter. If I text her to schedule, if I call her to just like, oh, I just want to schedule a check-in on your goals, she's gonna be like, oh, can you text me? Because then I'll get back to it sooner. Literally, right? So it depends on the personality, getting to know the people, but for sure a phone call is gonna be phone call or in person is gonna be the most effective. If you already have them as a captive audience in an open house and they're telling you they have a real estate need, why would you not go, hey, you know what? Let's figure out a time that we can meet. Why don't you come into my office and let's talk about what this process would look like, right? Face to face, it's way harder to tell people no. You can give them a little puppy dog eyes, maybe start to work up some tears or something, make them feel really bad for you that you're not, that they're gonna reject you and not wanna meet with you. So anyway, those are the least effective is text and email. I think email for sure is the least effective. And then phone calls or in person are best. They're going to be best for lead conversion. So now when you're setting the appointment, so we're going to have, this is a whole page of closes. Okay, so you're going to have this. There's a hard close. Let's meet. I don't think this is it. Maybe there's a, nope. So you'll have these in there. There's a hard close, there's a soft close. I've really enjoyed visiting with you. Would you like to get together to discuss this further? A direct close. Hey, can we meet today? I've got some time at 5. Would that work? An indirect close would be okay if I got some information for you to look over and then we can meet to discuss. A trial close. Have we got over enough today that a meeting would be our next step? The assumptive close. It sounds like we should meet. I'm available most times this week. So what works best for you? The negative positive close. I think this is my least favorite. Would you be offended if I asked if we could meet and go over this sometime? That's not my favorite close.
How did you mention it?
Take that close. I've really enjoyed visiting with you. To be honest, I'm not sure if I can help or not, but I'd be honored if we could meet to find out. The tie down close. Wouldn't it make sense for us to meet in the next day or two to discuss this? The alternative choice close. What works better for you meeting sometime today, tomorrow afternoon, or this morning? That's actually my favorite. I love to give people choices. It's harder to say no if I go, hey, I've got some time tomorrow at 5 p.m. or Tuesday at noon, which is better for you. If I've scheduled recruit appointments with you, that's probably what you guys caught was my alternate choice close. Because I like to just give you choices. And then if nothing else, you're not just going to say no. If you look and you're like 5 o'clock or noon doesn't work for me, you're going to go, gosh, I actually can't on Tuesday and Wednesday at noon, I already have a lunch appointment scheduled. I'm like, oh, what about Friday at 4?
Question.
Yeah.
What if you get in and they want to go look at the house, and when you look at the time that they want to do it, there's an open house. Would you do it during the open house? Would you wait until it was another time so that you'd have them as a captive audience? Like you do it through Super or whatnot?
So it depends. If that's the time, if that's the chunk of time I'm going, I'll try to get other houses maybe that are around the same time, but I would go with them to the open house versus just send them.
Yeah.
You're definitely not going to have just only them because there's other people in the house. There's likely another agent in the house. So I think it kind of depends on the situation.
If you have a buyer broker.
Yeah, so like if you don't have a buyer broker agreement in place, my thoughts are, I wouldn't want to take them to the open house.
Well,
Because what if they go and they like the other agent better? Like that's. not-
also, yeah, and we can't be showing them in another example. So if they
Yeah.
didn't have an agreement signed of some kind, then we couldn't show them outside of the open house.
Well, yeah,
So
so,
that might be a way to be like, hey, I'll meet you outside the open house. Let's chat. I would always still, even if there's an open house, they're like, hey, an open house is happening tomorrow. They can see it's a public open house. They're going to know it's happening. I would push to meet with them before the open house, even if it's like, hey, can we just, because sometimes people are not going to be able to come into the office or whatever.
Yeah.
Would you mind let's just jump on a quick Zoom call and we can go through the process, and I'll jump on a Zoom and pull up my little buyer wheel that shows them the process.
how many days do you try and like meet with them, right? So let's say they call you on a Sunday
Okay.
and they want to meet on a Saturday for the open house.
Okay, so that's
You'd be
like
like,
a week from
try
then.
and push for like Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, something like that.
I would try to push to meet with them beforehand. I would prefer to have an agreement signed before they're gonna go look at open houses. Because there's a bunch of other things they could be looking at, right? Are they gonna be looking at new construction? I wanna have a conversation about them, why it's important that I set up those appointments, right? So it's situational, but yeah, for sure, I would say, I push to meet as soon as possible, right? Here's what's gonna happen. They talk to you on Sunday, they don't have an open house till Saturday. Something else is gonna happen along the way.
Yep.
And they're gonna start talking to someone else. Well, who's more aggressive about getting the appointment? If you're like, yeah, sure, no problem. You don't want to meet till Saturday. You don't want to go to the open house till Saturday. Let's meet Saturday morning. And someone else is excited about them meeting. And they're like, oh gosh, let's meet tomorrow. Let's talk that through, or I have time later today. Whoever's gonna be the most tenacious about getting the appointment, maybe not aggressive. But that whoever's gonna push for the appointment is likely gonna get it. And most of the time, the first person to meet is the person that gets the agreement signed. Does that make sense?
It does.
Like, there's times when people have even told me like, oh, well, I have so-and-so that I'm meeting with later, and I'm like, I'm happy to call the agent, and let him know you can't make it to your appointment, because we've already signed an agreement. Would that make it easier for you to cancel that appointment? And luckily, nobody's told me yes yet, because that would be an uncomfortable conversation, but I would have it. Okay.
Sounds rough.
In the end, if they can meet and they have a good enough reason to meet, they will meet. If they don't, they won't. That's okay. You don't really care what their answer is. Ultimately, you're not gonna get people to do anything they don't wanna do. You're just gonna ask them and respond until they agree to meeting with you, makes sense, or it doesn't. Either way, you both. Any ahas or questions from that section? And I promise I'm gonna. scroll over
What's
this so
like
fast.
the length for these? The longest, like, I know you could do an agreement just for like one property or
Yeah.
one day, but what's the other side of that?
I typically, so I'll tell you why I do mine the way I do it. Ken probably has another, everybody has their own way of doing things. I've had people that do it for 90 days. I've heard people do it for 6 months. I like to have a year agreement signed. And the reason why is because maybe I met with them and they're in a lease for 90 more days or whatever. Well, they still want to work with me. I want to work with them. We're going to start having conversations. Maybe what they're looking for is really unique. I will do it for that time frame, and I almost always tell them, like, my goal is to find you a house within this amount of time. And this is what we're gonna be looking at. I don't want to be looking at houses for a year, quite frankly. Right?
Sure, yeah.
But it still does protect me in the event that for some reason that happens. I don't go beyond that. I know there are people that do, but I've been on the other side of that where I've had someone who just didn't really know better. They met someone at a house. They told me they had to sign an agreement with them. And this was not even that long ago. I had somebody that was she knew my sister-in-law, was my sister-in-law's niece. And she went to like an open house. They said, oh, there's these other houses. And they were like, oh, you just have to sign this. And it was for any property, anywhere, literally every single county in the state of Utah for a 24-month agreement.
Cool.
Now that to me is not a great business practice, right? Because they didn't sit down with them. They didn't explain the contract. She didn't really know what she was signing. Was it her job to read it? Sure. They should have known what she was signing. But at the end of the day, my job, I'm the professional. My job is to tell them what they're signing. And so everybody's a little bit different. And I think the market's a little different too. With a buyer in this market, you could probably do 6 months pretty easy. Throw in a protection clause of 3 months. So if you show them something on the last day of your contract, you have 3 months to write something on it. And like a listing agreement is also different, right? When I very first started, like it was take a listing agreement for 18 months. And you might have to get an extension depending on the house, right? Because it was a real buyer's market at that point. Now, a listing agreement of 18 months, the only time I do that is if there's something really unique about the property, we're pricing it over the value for some, whatever the reason, there's some, but my rule of thumb on both is just a year.
And there are always 2 separate agreements, are they ever
Yes.
just one?
No, they're always two. So if you have somebody that's going to be selling their house to purchase, you need a listing agreement, your exclusive right to sell, and then you also need a buyer's agency. They're 2 separate agreements. And there are times where somebody has a listing agreement, maybe they're not going to buy with you for whatever reason. Or maybe you have a buyer's agreement and then they decide they're going to list their house with some. So it is 2 separate agreements. If you're ever in that case, my little piece of advice down my little bunny trail is if you're representing them on a buy side, for example, and maybe they already have their house listed, it is not your job to give them advice on the house they have listed. They need to talk to their agent on those things. You represent them on the buy side and vice versa.
It's probably hard to do.
It's hard. It's so hard to do. Right? It's hard to do because you're just,
Do it.
you know what you should do is,
Rare that happens.
it is, I have only actually had it happen. Usually I'll represent them both. I've had it happen in some cases, like I've met people at open houses that have been pretty upfront and said, hey, I have my house listed. We're not, like, things are not working out with our listing agent. We don't want to purchase with them. We haven't signed anything. And in that case, then I'm like, oh, let's talk about it. By the way, I always like really meet with them and ask a lot of questions in that case, because don't always just take it at face value. Because what you'll hear sometimes is my agent sucks or they're not doing anything. And then I'll look at the listing and I'm like, oh, man, well, you're way overpriced.
Yep.
That's why your house isn't selling. Your agent could be doing every single thing right. And it's overpriced, and that's not gonna, you can't overcome that in today's market. And so I always ask a lot of questions in that case.
I guess around here, it could happen because like, we have a lot of military jobs.
For sure.
So we could be like helping people find something while their other home in other states listed or something.
For sure. And in that case, unless you're listed in that, or unless you are licensed in that state, you wouldn't be helping them anyway. But yes,
Yeah.
you will have a lot of times where they've got a house for sale and now they're moving here. You're going to communicate with that agent, especially if you're writing offers. So I'll ask them if that's a scenario that does happen a lot. I would ask them, hey, do you mind if I get your agent's contact information for your house in Missouri that you're selling?
Okay.
Because I need to be able to communicate with them, because you want to know from them, hey, is the price right? What kind of activity are you getting? Because if I'm gonna write an offer and I'm calling Ken and it's contingent on a sale, I want Ken to know that I'm like, hey, I've talked to the agent in the other state. They're getting a ton of activity. If it's not under contract by this day, they have an aggressive plan to reduce the price to get it under contract. Because I want to present my buyer in the very best light. And if I don't know anything about what's happening on the other side, but I'll usually get that information directly from the agent if they give me permission to call them.
And you would prefer to get that information from the agent, not just the
100%.
clients themselves.
Because your client is gonna tell you that
They're in that
anything,
situation Or whatever.
right? The client's gonna be like, oh, yeah, it should be under contract, no problem, really quick. And then you talk to the listing agent and the listing agent's like, man, they've rejected 4 really good offers.
Okay, so. you
Right?
always-
So I always like to talk to them directly. Now I tell them like, hey, make sure your agent knows I'm gonna be calling them. Make sure they know that we're okay to communicate, right? Because the agent has confidentiality agreement most likely in place as well. So they're not gonna give you a lot of information unless their client says, hey, my agent in Utah is gonna be calling you. Does that make
Got it.
sense?
Yeah, okay.
Okay. Improve your conversion rates. Time block for follow-up, use systems, connect with your whole database, and prioritize qualified leads. If you're using Command, you're gonna have what's called an opportunity pipeline. I think when you're in a conversation that someone has a real need, everybody's rule of thumb is gonna be a little different. I think if they have a need within the next 60 days, you should put them in your pipeline. They're gonna probably sit in the cultivate section of your pipeline for a minute. If you get in the habit of every day opening up Command, looking at your pipeline, you're gonna see, oh, here's my people that I'm cultivating. Here's the people that I'm pushing for an appointment for. Here's the people I've had an appointment with. It's gonna help you with your follow-up systems. So, make sure that you have a system, you're gonna follow it. You're gonna convert better if you're following some type of a system. And also make sure that everyone in your database is getting some type of a touch, but this is where your automated systems are gonna come in place. You don't have time in the day to talk to the 500 people in your database every single month. You just don't. But of those 500 people, who's most likely gonna be having some kind of an activity that month is probably these people that are in your pipeline. So those should be the ones that you're having voice to voice, texting and checking in more regularly. Some of those people, like on mine, the Ds, they're just getting a monthly newsletter from me. They're not gonna get invites to these things. They're not gonna get this. They're not gonna get a phone call quarterly. They're just gonna get an email. The lead conversion model. So this is where we've already talked through. We're gonna capture, we're gonna connect, we're gonna cultivate the relationship, we're gonna close by asking for the appointment. Ahas. Anything? I think that's it. Ken, did I finish? Fine. Let me see. Am I late? How am I?
That was just.
To say though, I'm 8 minutes late, and to be fair, our conversation initially with Allison went more than 10 minutes. So I feel like that is the least amount of rabbit holes I've ever gone down teaching Ignite. You're welcome. This one page in here is your KW, our conversion system and the KW belief system, your win-win or no deal, integrity. Read through this. I think if you can connect to these in some way, shape, or form, and then connect that back with how you're connecting to people, like the win-win or no deal is a huge thing for me, because I really do believe it's got to be a win for everybody. The seller has to feel like they're winning, even if you're representing the buyer. The seller, it has to be a win for them. It's got to be a win for your buyer. It's got to be a win for both of you as agents. It's got to be a win for everybody. Win-win or no deal, right? If everybody feels like they're losing, then it's probably not a transaction you're going to get to close. So I think it's important to tie your values, whether it's the KW core values or whatever else you're going to bring in. It's important to tie those back into there. That's it on my notes. I just want to see if there was any other activity you had to do. Converting your conversion rates. Figure out your conversion rates and know what they are. This is one of the things I think Ken will agree that will set the good apart from the great. The great agents you've got to know your numbers. You have to know your numbers. You can have success. you will never have, like, you can make some money, you can have success, but you're never gonna really have a great business if you don't know what your conversion rates are. And if you'll get good at tracking them and converting them, that's a big piece of your follow-up. If you're like, yep, I talked to them today, you're tracking it as an appointment, how many appointments is it taking to get an appointment? How many conversations is it taking to get an appointment? How many appointments do you have to go on to get contracts signed? If you're going on 10 appointments and you're only getting 1 contract signed, you're either not qualifying the appointment enough, like it's not really an appointment that needed to happen, or you need to work on your appointment content itself. So if you're tracking your conversion rates and you're tracking all those pieces, you can tell if you're improving, because you can get better at the conversation for more appointments. You can be more intentional with who you're talking to, but track, know your conversion rates. Okay. Any other questions while I'm getting the next one set up?
When did you
Oh,
start?
is this you? No. I don't
When
know.
did you start tracking your conversion rates?
Honestly, I was like pretty loosely tracking. And it was really when I joined Keller Williams, because it was like, you gotta track this stuff. And I was like, oh, well, why would I need to do that?
Who did you start with? And how long were you with them for Keller Williams?
So I was with another brokerage.
You don't want to say who.
No, I can say it, I'm careful. I was with, it started out, it was, when I first started, it was Better Homes and Gardens. I mean, it was Franklin Group, which was a smaller kind of independent brokerage. Penny Stark was my first broker. She was amazing. And she was what drew me to that company. And then they merged eventually with Better Homes and Gardens, which is part of the Anywhere brand. So similar, Coldwell Banker, Better Homes, C21, they're all kind of the same brand. And I was there for 9 years.
Oh, wow. So
So I was there for a long time. So I would say, to me, when I talk about relationships, like the people that I worked with were what kept me there. I knew I was actually like stunting my business, I think, for a while
So you
before I finally made the change, because I was really connecting with people and I just kept thinking, oh, I can do more, I can bring more value. But I was just bouncing my head against the ceiling. I wasn't going anywhere. I walked out of a coaching conversation with Marcus Green that wasn't even a Keller Williams conversation at the time. It was, I had hired him for independent coaching because I wasn't gonna make a move. And I walked out, I called my husband from the car in the parking lot, and I said, oh my gosh, I gotta make a move. And I was sad about it. I was like, I just learned more in the last 45 minutes about my business and what I need to do differently than I have in the last 9 years. And he's like, oh, gotta make a move. So that's what I did. Hey,
Thanks.
you bet. Ken, it's all you, friend.
Hey, thanks. We need to take a break. We need a restroom break.
Oh, we just took ours.
Okay,
Got up and did
okay, push.
break.
So we're gonna continue this conversation.
Should I send around my hangry agent bucket?
You're what?
People are sitting
Yeah,
there
let's
with
do
my
that.
hangry.
Yeah, I need all the help I can get. This looks like a tough crowd.
Yeah. Need some competition.
You're gonna need to restock the hangry agent bucket. So
All right.
pass it around. You're in my office, you're finding yourself hangry. It's a free for all, you can do it. Don't like hungry. I found someone else's AirPod, that wasn't even mine. Oh my God. I went home and both of mine were home. Jen goes, I found your AirPods. And I was like, oh, interesting. I took someone else's. So somebody left their AirPods sitting on my desk. I have no idea. who this was. And I put it in my ear. No, it was dead.
You're like, oh, it's.
I stuck it in my ear and then I was like, what? And I was like, oh, it must be dead.
So what?
And I put someone's AirPod in my ear. I don't know.
AirPod Pro, just like a regular AirPod or like.
It's like the Gen 3 or whatever, like not the Pro. I don't like the Pros don't stay in my ears.
Yeah, I know.
It's this one. But if you lost your AirPod and you put it on my desk, this is it. I was thinking about charging it, seeing if it would pop up, like,
Yeah,
Yeah.
but I don't know.
yeah, I don't know.
I don't know if it'll pop up. I'm gonna put it.
At least it wasn't covered in like.
Yeah.
I was like, well,
It had earwax.
It wasn't mine. And then I looked at it, I was like, okay, this is someone with relatively clean ears. Like, okay, could have been way worse.
Hey, we're gonna talk about strengthening relationships. How important is relationships?
Super boring.
It's everything.
It's everything, right? It's everything we do. It's from our intimate relationships to our business relationships to our social relationships. So relationships is the core of life. And so with real estate, it's no different. We are in the people business. We are in the talking to people business. You guys think you're going into real estate, but you're really not. You're going into lead generation. You're in the lead generation business, because without leads, you have no business. So what I'm going to talk about is I'm going to talk about a little bit more about how we cultivate these leads. Rusty talked about leads, lead generation, and the progression of leads from leads to closing. So we're going to talk a little bit more about how to cultivate those leads, okay? People work with agents that they feel a emotional proximity to. What do you think the definition of emotional proximity means? What
They
does
have
that
some
mean?
kind of an emotional tie or a thread through some kind of like a mutual. Like maybe they both go to the same gym, or they go to something, the same club.
Yeah, somebody that they feel like they kind of have a common interest with. When I go on listing appointments, I walk in the front door. Actually, before I walk in the front door, I pay attention to what's out in the driveway. What kind of vehicles do they drive? What kind of RVs do they have? Can I see anything that is out in the yard that might let me know kind of what their interests are? Do we have any interests in common? When I go into the house, I look for things in the house that maybe they have there that I might be able to strike a conversation on. Do they collect artwork? Do they collect sculptures? Do they collect whatever? You know, what kind of dog do they have? So it's creating that emotional proximity with them. The definition of emotional proximity, according to Webster, is that if you have emotional proximity with somebody, there's a trust. There's a trust or a commonality between you and the client. And that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to get them to trust us. And we have to spend enough time in conversation with them in order to develop that trust. That's what your goal is to spend enough time in conversation with them, not in one dose, perhaps, depending on how conversational they are, but over the course of this cultivation process is to spend enough time and have a quality enough of a conversation that you're developing that emotional proximity. Does that make sense?
Like dating.
It's not dating. Yeah, it is, you know, for sure. I like my flight's down.
No, I would tell you that too, though. That's a real friend.
So what we're gonna talk about is, lead follow-up, keeping every lead, follow up with leads, strengthening relationships. That's what we're focusing on in this segment, is strengthening those relationships. A lot of people are a little in their head about this business, in that they go, gosh, I'm really worried about reaching out to somebody because I don't know if they want what I'm selling. Are we selling stuff, guys?
You have to get the outcome out of your head. You go, it's like systems, right? You reach out, you do what you can, and it's not about the outcome. Let's see, what's her name? Mel Robbins. She talks about how with the 5-second rule, and she gives the example of a guy in a bar going up and talking to a girl that he's really scared to talk to. And at the end, she's like, whether he gets the date or, they get married, whatever, she's like, that is irrelevant. What is pertinent is he went up and he talked to her. Yeah. It's trying.
Yeah, exactly. It's trying. So you're not gonna succeed unless you try, right? So that's part of it. The other thing is that in the process of trying, what's he doing? He's perfecting his skill. He's perfecting his conversation. He's perfecting his technique. He's perfecting his ability to create proximity.
Yeah.
Each of us got married to our spouses through what? Emotional proximity. You were in contact with them. You somehow came in contact with them. You worked with them. You, lived next to them. You went to the same gym that they did. There was something, you were on the same social media channel, whatever it was. You created proximity with that individual. And then you were able to take that from proximity to emotional proximity. And it's that emotional proximity that builds that trust, where your clients will allow you to serve them. So that's our goal, is to create that emotional proximity. We're not selling anything, guys. We're not salespeople. We're service people. We're providing a service to these people. So when you start making your calls, or you're out knocking doors or whatever, you're not a solicitor. You're not selling anything. Definition of a solicitor is a salesperson. What you're doing when you're calling or going out knocking doors, you're seeing if somebody is in need of your service. That's what you're doing. And so there's a big difference, because you're providing a service to them. And if you do your job right, change people's lives. Seriously do. You're helping people with the biggest financial decision in their life. And in the process of doing that, you're blessing and changing your life, if you do it right. Like I mentioned in the introduction, that couple that I helped in January, that was a nightmare. That was the third property I've sold to them. And so if you do your job right, you're going to create a lifelong friend and a lifelong client. And they're not going to shop you, even if somebody else comes along, because they know you, they trust you, and you've taken care of them. And so what you want to do, have any of you read the book Raving Fans? If you don't have that book, get that book. It is absolutely amazing. I don't.
Is it, you got it on the Google Drive,
Yeah, it's on Google.
like a PDF?
For coaching.
Oh,
For sure, there's like MREA, there's some 2 books in there.
yeah, those are mainly killer books, but
Yeah, for sure.
but Raving Fans is a book that I would highly recommend. Yeah, Ken Blanchard. It's amazing. It's an amazing book. And so it talks about what you need to do in order to take somebody from just being a client to being a raving fan, because that's where you ultimately want these people to end up. Because a raving fan is going to be loyal to you, plus a raving fan is going to recommend you. Someone who is not a raving fan, they're not going to recommend you. Okay. If you're kind of, you know, there's other people out there that can be, you know.
Sometimes even with a raving fan, you have to coach them, because they can tell somebody that, hey, you know, I've got this friend that's a realtor. But if they have someone like that, get their contact information, be like, is it okay if I call them? Because if they're just secondhand, like telling people these things, they're not selling it as well as they could be, and you can lose out on opportunities. And that's a personal experience. Like, I got a friend that she was like, hey, I referred this guy. And I was like, what's his number? She's like, well, I told him really good, and I gave him your card.
Yeah.
He never called me.
Yeah.
And then he went with another realtor, and I was like, okay, that was a learning experience.
Exactly. Yeah, you want to be a proactive agent and get people to refer you business that's proactively. In other words, they're giving you their contact information and not giving your your contact information to them, because then it's in their court when they call you.
Yeah.
Or if they call you, say, hey, that's great. You know, can I get their number so I
He
can reach
still
them?
apologizes to me.
Does
to this
he?
day about it. He's like, I'm sorry.
Yeah, it's tough. But you just got to train people, like you said. You know, in this business and in life in general, what you focus on, expands. So what you focus on expands. If you're not focusing on that particular element of your business, it's not going to expand. Know that growth comes from clarity, priorities, and focused action. So in this process in Ignite and tonight, we're going to talk about clarity, what it is. What part of the clarity is that we're not salespeople. We're service providers. That's what we do. We provide service to people. We're gonna talk about what priorities you should have in your business. Some of that is up to you. The beauty of this business is that each of us are independent contractors. And each of us get to build the kind of business that we want to build. And we get to do it in a way that we want to do it. What is your niche? Okay, where do you want to spend your time? What kind of clients do you want to have? Early on in my business, like I said, I had a commercial background. So I got into REOs, which is real estate owned. So if the bank foreclosed on somebody, I had a relationship with 3 banks. They would send me the houses that they foreclosed on. Sounds a little gruesome, doesn't it? It's not really the funnest job. But if I do my job right, the beautiful thing is that I started before 2008. which when the economy melted down. And that was a real smart thing. I can't say I was that smart. I was just lucky. I kind of decided I wanted to do that part of the business before 2008. It actually ended up being a good thing for me. There still are short sales. There still are foreclosures in the market, not to the extent then. But what is it you want to do? Where do you want to prioritize your business? And you guys are at the point right now where you should be doing some soul searching, some planning, and some goal setting along those lines so that you can focus your energy where you want it to be. Do you want to, how do you want to build your business? What kind of clientele do you want to go after? So that's what we're talking about, priorities. And then focused action. I'll add in addition to focused action, tonight we're going to talk about leverage. Okay, each of us are here tonight and in this business because we want to earn more money. There's only a certain amount of money you can earn yourself because you're limited by time. There's only 8 hours in the day, 12 hours in the day. Like I said, I've been in the business 34 years. I still work 60 and 70-hour weeks. You know, why? Because I can, because I do, because I love what I do. If you love what you do, you'll never work a day in your life. And I know that sounds cliche, but those that are successful in this business love helping other people. You're a people person. If you're not a people person, you're not going to be successful. What do you think?
Very true.
Yeah.
Very, very true.
Okay, we talked about this just in a different realm. So we have lead capture. So we've talked about how we capture leads. And now what we're going to talk about is the mechanisms and tools to move from leads to contacts. What's the difference between a lead and a contact? Anybody?
Conversations.
Conversation. That's an action to where we move from lead to contact.
Yeah.
A lead is somebody who you've been introduced to, you've met. And a contact is somebody that you've gathered information about. You know their name, you've gathered their telephone number, maybe their email address, maybe their address if they're a seller instead of a buyer. If they're a buyer, maybe what cities they're interested in buying in. Just even in your first conversation as you're kind of gathering facts. So we have a higher degree of information on a contact than we do a lead. And then we take that information from the contact, and that's where we start to transition them from a lead to a contact. And then eventually through our processes that we're going to talk about, then we get to the point where we prepare them for conversion. And we get to the point where we start entering into transactions with them. Okay. All right, in order to do this, we need to have the proper mindset. Focus on building relationships and take market share. This was something that a top producing agent talked about in a Red Talk back in 2018. Focus on building relationships and take market share. That's how you're going to have this business of yours mushroom out as you have these emotional proximity relationships with your clients. And they trust you and they refer you. That's how you're going to grow your business. I do very, very little prospecting now in my business, very seldom. And I didn't do a lot of prospecting initially because I was fortunate enough when I started the business that I had a fairly large SOI. When I started the business, I had about 400 people in my SOI and just worked that SOI until it's grown and grown. Now it's about 1,000 people in my SOI. And like I said, a lot of those give me repeat business. So I don't have to prospect like I did before. Do I still prospect? Yes, I still do. I prospect every day for a little bit, but I get the majority of my business from my SOI, sphere of influence. Those are the people who I've done business with in the past, okay? They help me build my business. Today's conversations is tomorrow's transaction. They use the analogy, the plant analogy in this conversation. So it says that if your database is the garden, then your leads are the seeds and your contacts are the plants. And conversion is the harvest. That's the harvest. That's when you realize the bounties of your work is when you enter into transactions with people and close deals. So I thought that was really cool. Your database is your garden, so you've got to have a place to work. In our business, sometimes we call it farm area. Have you heard people talk about a farm area? Each of you should be establishing your farm area. Where is it where you want to cultivate your leads? It can be a neighborhood where you currently live. It could be a previous neighborhood. It could be maybe somewhere where you even lived as a child, where your parents live. It can be a church area. It can be a club. Okay, where do you want to farm your business? So that analogy kind of rings true in this business. They call it a garden. I call it a farm area. Your leads are your seeds, and your contacts are your plants. Okay. Once you meet your new contacts, you either do business with them immediately or you don't. You're on their time frame. They're not on your time frame. You're on their time frame. Okay. Either way, once you've met them, now you put their information into your database and you stay in touch with them forever. Like I said, I've been in the business 34 years. I have people in my database that I've known for probably 40 or 50 years. And they're still part of my 36 touch program. And we'll talk a little bit more about that. Have you guys been introduced to the 36 touch?
Yeah.
Okay. So that's a great program. And so they're always, once you've met them, they're always a contact. Okay. So what are your goals in this business? Have you guys talked about goal setting to this point? Okay. And have any of you started to set your goals? Rough goals? Okay.
Yeah,
That's a good question.
I have like them in my head, but they change a little bit here and there, and then I'm like, I need to write them down, but I'm like, they're constantly like,
Yeah,
I swear I have ADHD.
yeah.
Down, come up with a plan.
Yeah, write them down, come up with a plan. Each of us in management are available to sit down with you guys and go over your plans and kind of steer you in the right direction. We're not going to tell you how to do your business and where to do your business, but what we're going to do is we're going to take your goals and say, okay, here's your ultimate goal. Now, what do we need to do? Where do you need to focus your time, energy, and resources? Okay, if you ultimately want to have this many transactions on an annual basis, we're going to help you understand what you need to do on a monthly, weekly, and a daily basis in order to achieve those goals. You have to work backwards. Okay, so if you haven't gotten to that point yet, take time to do that. If you fail to plan, you plan to fail. That's really, you're going to waste a lot of time. Somebody asked the question, I think you asked the question of Russie, what would you do differently at this point in her career? In my career, I would have planned more. I was not a planner. And I'll be very honest, I wasn't a planner until probably 5 years ago. I'm a late bloomer. Yeah,
When
late.
you suddenly were like, I want to get this business. I gotta retire.
Gotta retire.
Oh, no.
It's a little late. That's like deathbed repentance in my case. But I did. I started to.
Too late.
Too late.
Never too late.
So I really just started to set goals a few years ago. I sit down every year with Russie and review my goals with her.
Yep.
And you know, and I said, I don't know if I said it, I think I said it to you, that since I've been doing it, every year I've
Yes.
accomplished my goals. Maybe not all of them, but I've accomplished the important ones. The ones that I really believe make a difference in me as a person and in my financial health. And so that's really been a testament to me as to how important goals are in your life. I really wasn't a goal maker, but the last 5 years, it's been a big blessing in my life. So we have to, what we're going to talk about is moving people from lead generation, the lead follow-up, and then to a transaction. How many of you like that? Is that a good scenario? That's where the money is. Okay. Convert contacts to closed business. Okay. So this is an interesting statistic, and I believe in this 1000%. So what this diagram basically says that convert leads to contacts to close business, stay top of mind. So we want to do two things. So these are the two things that we want to do and we want to understand tonight. One is that our number one goal is to create emotional proximity to people who we want to be our clients. Okay, we want to take leads who we don't have any proximity emotionally to, and we want to convert them to have emotional proximity with us. We'll talk about how we do that. Secondly, we want to stay top of mind with them. If you're not top of mind with your people in your database, with your leads, somebody else is. Okay, you can't swing a dead cat in the state of Utah without hitting a realtor. Realtors are everywhere. Hate that enough. Sorry about that. I have a cat, but I hate my cat. I love my dog, but it's not my cat. I inherited it from my son, but that's a whole nother story. Okay, so how do we make sure that we have a big enough harvest on an annual basis to fund our life, to give us the life that we want? The way we do that is by consistent follow-up with our leads. Okay,
Yeah.
we want to be in constant proximity with them.
And a big database.
Yes.
The bigger the better.
Big database. Your goal initially, you guys have already talked about this, 200. If you want to be in the 201 club, okay? How many of you are already there?
No way.
Nice, Jason. Anyone else?
Oh, no way.
Yeah, 201 contacts.
Did you talk about why that's important?
Yeah, it was like.
$650,000.
Spend it.
It's like, people that have 201 contacts make, what is it, 65% more income than the people with less than that in their database.
Yeah, that's the tipping point where you have enough business and you're cycling through those leads at a frequent enough basis that it gives you consistent income. Yeah, so that's what you want to do. All right. This is really interesting, and I believe in this. So according to the NAR, National Association of Realtors, 74% of the public only speaks with one agent when they're looking to sell a house. I honestly believe that. Back in the day, I belonged to a referral service, and the referral service would send me leads. People would go on a website, they'd fill out saying they wanted to either buy or sell a house. And then they sent that lead electronically to me and to two other agents. And we knew that. We knew that I was competing with two other agents. So time was of the essence, right? When I would get that lead from that lead source, I don't care if I was on the freeway or I was eating dinner, which obviously is very important to me. I would stop whatever I was doing. I would pull over my car or whatever I was doing, and I would make that call. Because I knew that 74% of the time, if I was the first person to talk to that lead, I would get that listing or I would get that buyer. And it happened time and time and time again. So that's why you want to be the first person to make contact with your leads, is so that you're top of mind with them. And usually they're not going to shop around. 74% of the time, they're not going to shop around. Only 15% of the public talks to two agents. And everyone else, 11% of them talk to two agents. With buyers, it's even a little bit more. It's 75% only talk to one buyer's agent. This is 75% of the public. 15% talk to two agents. And the other part of the population, 10% of them will talk to more than one agent. So the numbers are on your side. Okay, so keep that in mind as you're making your calls, as you're prospecting. The odds are in your favor. I want to tell you a little story about being in the right place at the right time. So when I first got into business, like you guys, and it was probably before most of you, with the exception of Mr. Welch there, you guys probably weren't even born yet when I got into business.
I was.
Barely.
I was
10,
what year did you?
91.
I was 11.
Man, I feel old all of a sudden. So I got the business and, I got my first deal. I was so excited because I got my first deal and I was in the office, I was standing at my cubicle. And a title officer was in the office and she was doing her marketing. She was doing her prospecting, okay? She was going around to all the agents in the office, introducing herself. Hey, I'm Angie Dastic with Fidelity Title. Just want to introduce myself. Do you have anything I can help you with? And here I was standing at my cubicle with my first deal in my hand.
For sure, yeah.
Yeah, I said, yeah, sure. Sure, I didn't know what I was doing. I guess I had to give it to a title person. So I handed her that contract 34 years ago. And I still use her today. Actually, don't quote me on that. I still use her today. We have our title company here as well, but talk about being in the right place at the right time, right? 34 years later, she hasn't changed a bit either in 34 years. But she is an amazing escrow officer and I still use her today. I probably have sent her 500 transactions in the last 34 years. So she's made a lot of money off me. So my point in telling you that story is that sometimes in this business, it's being in the right place at the right time, okay? The other part of it is skill and persistence and leveraging your business. But that's why you want to be top of mind. That's why you want to try to cover as much territory as possible, because you never know when the opportunity is going to arise. Okay. Now let's talk about devising a plan. So each of you are independent contractors and you have the opportunity to develop your own business. Our goal of this session is to convert leads to appointments. Like Rusty said, without appointments, there are no transactions because it's in appointments that we have an opportunity to talk about contracts and get people to sign contracts. We use our follow-up systems in order to stay in contact with people who are not ready today to buy. Very seldom have I ever met a contact, sometimes even referrals that are ready to buy today. It's a process of cultivation, okay? I'm going to tell you another story. So last Wednesday, Tuesday or Wednesday, I got a referral on a guy that said he wanted to buy. Friend of mine gave me his name and number and said, hey, call this guy. He's thinking about buying. So I called him and I said, hey, this is Ken. John tells me that you're thinking about selling your house and buying another house. And he goes, nah, I'm not going to do that for 4 years. And I said, why 4 years? And he said, well, we just want to save some money and interest is high right now. And I just don't think it's the right time for me to buy. I said, I get that. You know, there's a lot of negative stuff out in the news and out in the media about the market. How about this? This is where I'm getting into another topic. So I gave him a MOFR. Who knows what a MOFR is?
Oh, you guys learned it. I know you
Yeah,
did.
you did.
It's written.
For
Response. Good job. I'm gonna give you a treat after the class. You're gonna be the
I got
winner.
to it.
Yeah. So I think
It is make an offer for immediate response.
I am offer. I said, hey, I get that. I respect it. I said, let me ask you, you know how much money you're gonna get out of the selling of your house? No, don't really know. I said, do you know kind of what houses are selling for right now? Are you familiar with the market? No, not really familiar with the market either. I know a little bit about it, but I can't tell you exactly what my house is worth, and I can't tell you exactly what I would get out of selling my house. So I said, okay, fair enough. How about this? Here's the offer. How about if I come to your house and I'm going to bring a CMA with me? What's a CMA? Yeah, I'm not an appraiser. We're not appraisers, but we do CMAs, comparative market analysis. I said, I'm going to bring a CMA and I'm going to tell you what I think your house is worth. I'm also going to bring you some statistics on the market so that you can understand the number of sales in your neighborhood, what your houses are selling for in your neighborhood. And then I'm also gonna bring you a seller net sheet with me. I'm gonna bring you 3 things. Would that be okay? And he says, what's a seller net sheet? Anybody know what a seller net sheet is?
How much they make, how much closing costs are, everything.
Perfect. So I said, I'll bring you a seller net sheet so that when you decide to sell, you'll be able to know how much money is coming out of your house. And he goes, well, I'm really not selling for 4 years. And I said, that's okay. I still think it's important for you to know, don't you? Kind of establish a basis for the market, and then things would just build on that over the next 4 years. Sure, yeah, why not? Come by. So I go over to his house last Wednesday or Thursday and met with him and his wife. And I pulled out my statistics, and there's some awesome tools on the MLS where you can talk about statistics. So I showed him in his neighborhood how many houses had sold over the last year, each month, what the average price was for the houses, how much per square foot each of the houses sold for, how close to the listing price versus the sold price that each of the houses sell for. So in other words, what kind of a discount are sellers taking right now and selling their houses? How many days on market? It also said how many days on market on average. So I took him that report. I took him a CMA for his house, and I told him his house was worth $425,000. He told me that he owed $133,000 on the house. Yeah.
My
He
water.
has 290, something like that, 290,000.
Huh?
His eyes lit up. And, can you guys?
If you Zoom and you're talking, will you please mute if you're having an outside conversation?
Thanks. So showed him that he had $290,000 in his house. And so by the end of that conversation, he decided that he's not gonna wait 4 years to sell. The other thing statistically on the statistical report, I showed him that since 2020 to 2024, in his particular neighborhood, houses had gone up 40%. Some of that was in 2021. The market went nuts. In 2021, houses were selling with multiple offers. People were giving their firstborn.
I should have sold my house.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a great time to be a seller, not such a great time to be a buyer, but if you can sell, if you can sell and wait, it was awesome, but
Those 2% and 3% interest rates all day.
yeah,
The fair prices.
yeah.
Other people would just buy all the real estate.
I'm trying.
So my point in showing him the 40% appreciation over the last 4 years was that he was a benefactor of that. He had gone from 200,000 to 400,000, 425. But it was also to show to him that in 4 years, and why did I pick 4 years?
Because he kept saying, I'm gonna sell again in 4 years.
4 years. So I went back 4 years and used that analogy on him to say, okay, if you wait 4 years, you want to pay 40% more for a house in 4 years than what you're gonna pay today. So the average house in Davis County is how much?
535.
Yeah, 535, 520, somewhere in there, low fives. So what's 40% appreciation on $500,000?
200,000
100 grand.
on 100,000.
It's 100 grand, right? No, you're right, 200,000.
Oh, yeah.
40 grand, you're right. $200,000. So I looked him in the face and I said, you want to pay $200,000 more for a house in order to wait 4 years? He was like, no, that's crazy. He said, you know what, though? My house is going to be worth $200,000 more too. I said, no, it's not. He said, why? I said, your house was built in 1970.
Oh.
It's a split entry. It's 3 bedrooms and 2 baths. And because of the age and the neighborhood and the floor plan, it's not appreciating at the same level that someone else's house is appreciating at. So yeah, it's a nice thought. I mean, it is going to appreciate. We've shown that it's going to appreciate, but not that much. So my point in telling you that story is that I took somebody who had a 4-year plan and we reduced that to probably a 4-month plan just by making them offer. by making an offer to educate him on the market, the value of his home, and educating him as to how much his house would sell for.
Sorry, what were the things that you brought in? It was
So I
the
took
CNA.
him market statistics from the MLS. And
For
it's
the
called the,
neighborhood,
what's that?
For the neighborhood.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can search by city, neighborhood, whatever. I drilled down on his particular subdivision. I took him that, I took him a seller net sheet. And that's something that we can help you with, the seller net sheet. And then I took him a CMA, so paired market analysis.
And that's a great example, Kim, of don't take the first response that they give you as
Yeah.
the final word. You're gonna get that in every open house, in every conversation. Oh yeah, we have a realtor.
Mhm.
You don't have a
That's the
realtor.
one I
Yeah.
Well, it's like, oh, who is that? I don't even just ask if they do anything.
get.
Like, realtor.
I have said that, I said, oh, who? And then
And then they're like, okay. Or they're like,
they're telling the truth.
but if they are, do you know what, you can also always say, this is a little side note, but you can also say things like, well, if you wanted a second opinion, who would you go to? Do you need a second opinion realtor? Cause guess what, I'd rather at least be on their radar,
Yeah.
because then you always have a shot to provide more value. Now, if they're already under contract with somebody, that's a
Yeah,
different
it was like
conversation.
somebody that, yeah.
But a lot of times they
was
just know
maybe
somebody,
looking- oh my
you
God,
know?
I just realized I have another contact.
Yeah.
Cause they were like, well, yeah, it just dawned on me, yeah, I always reach out to them now, cause
Yeah.
now I'm
Yeah,
like
do.
thinking,
Yeah, most of them.
that's a good idea, they have somebody, and I
Yeah.
found out who it is, but I was like, oh, but you know, if you need anything else, like, I could be your
Yeah.
second backup.
Yeah, if you want a second opinion, I mean, it's a lot of money, right? That's what I say to people, this is the most important financial decision you're making. Why just take one person's opinion on it? If you had a life-threatening illness, wouldn't you seek a second opinion? You're not just gonna take the first opinion that comes to you, right? So get a second opinion, I'll be your second opinion realtor. Because you're not gonna have a chance to garner their business if you don't sit down with them face to face and have an appointment.
Also, what do we know about most agents? They're terrible at follow-up. Right? And so chances are, maybe that agent was great at the time that they bought the house, but they haven't been following up, and if you're suddenly the one providing value to them, you just never know when it's gonna be an opportunity.
Yeah, and you might click with them
Yeah, differently.
differently than the other person. You may be really fun. You may be really educated on the market. You know, and that's what I would recommend to you too, is learn everything you can about the market. So that you can talk intelligently about the market, because really what they're looking for is, do they trust you? Do they like you as a person? And are you educated on the market? Do they believe that you're gonna bring good information to them about their real estate needs? So those are the three things that they're looking for, okay? So master those. Is every lead ready to go right now? No, they're not. So I'm gonna tell you another story. A few years ago, I had another lead that was brought to me. His name was Kenny Johnson. He was 42 years old and he'd never owned a house. He and his wife and 3 children. They'd rented an apartment their whole life. He came to me through a referral and we sat down, and his credit was horrible. He had a FICO score of about 510. He owed everybody in town money and he was late paying half of them. Okay. And I said, Kenny, I'm sorry, but I can't sell you a house right now because you need to work on your credit. And it wasn't a surprise to him. He said, yeah, I know. I've had some problems in life, and who has haven't? You know, so there was no judgment to that. So what I did is I hooked him up with a lender who specializes in credit repair. And the lender worked with him to fix his credit till he got his credit score up to, I think it was 690. So it still wasn't great credit, but it was decent credit to where we could get him most loan programs. And it took 2 years, 27 months for him to do that. And we finally were able to sell him a house, him and his wife. So went to the closing, we're in the closing, and we're getting about halfway through the closing, and his wife just breaks out in tears. She's crying. I still get emotional about it today. I said, what's the matter? This is supposed to be a happy time. Why are you crying? She says, I'm 43 years old And tomorrow, I'm gonna be able to wash my kids' clothes in their own washing machine. For 43 years, I've been hauling our clothes to the laundromat and spending a half a day twice a week washing our clothes. This is huge to me. She said, I finally realized the American dream. And she gave me the biggest hug. I waited 2 years for that commission check. The money didn't matter. It was the fact that I was able to change their lives. And he's referred me 3 family members since then, and I've sold them a second home now. So, if, like I said, we're here to serve. We're here to bless people's lives. You do your job right, you're gonna bless people's lives. If you do your job wrong, you're gonna curse people's lives because you're gonna help them make the worst financial decision in their life. And if you help them in a right way and help them obtain their goals, that's the thing of being emotionally, have an emotional proximity to them, is that you understand what their goals are. Clearly, you communicate with them about their goals, and then you execute on that. And that's how you develop raving fans. That's how you have longevity in the business. That's the difference between the average agent and a super agent, is that you are able to bring people and situations together for mutual benefit. We're almost out of time. Got 5 minutes left. I want to get you out of here on time. So I want to talk about the 36 touch. You guys have all talked about the 36 touch. I utilize the 36 touch. So every client, every lead that I get goes on a 36 touch automatically. I come back to the office, or I do it from my home office, and I put them in a 36 touch. Okay, the reason why I do that is that I want them to have consistent contact for me, and that helps me be top of mind. If they're getting an email, a text message, or a phone call, or a newsletter from me every month, and sometimes 2 or 3 times a month, depending on the situation, you think I'm going to be top of mind? I am. I'm going to be top of mind. And they have the opportunity to unsubscribe. And they do. Sometimes they unsubscribe. Am I okay with that? I'm okay with that.
Do you still call them?
I do not.
Okay.
The way I look at the unsubscribe, and that's just me, and I'm at a different point in my career at year 34, is that the way I interpret that is that's do not call me. That's the do not call. I'm not interested in your services. I'm not interested in you. So I'm unsubscribing. So I honor that.
You take
So-
them out of your database, or at least turn them back
I-
into a lead or something like that?
I leave them in the database, but they've unsubscribed, so they're not getting any more of my communications. So I honor it. Go ahead. Yeah.
So I think that the only thing that I would say to that, yes, because they're telling you not to contact them, you shouldn't then just recontact them. Like I get, Ken and you guys are all probably getting the same ones, like NAR Healthcare. Like, oh, what the hell? Literally 800
Yeah.
of those a day or whatever, right? If everyone I unsubscribed to just kept texting me, it'd be really irritating. The only time that I don't just not contact them anymore is, for example, like I have a VA that helps me with some of my marketing, and like our smart plan went a little cuckoo crazy, and it was texting people like 8 times about the Santa event. And so I had people that were like my clients that I'm in contact that I knew wanted to stay in contact with me, unsubscribe, thinking it just unsubscribed them from that one thing.
Yeah.
But you can't unsubscribe to just the one thing. It sends you a notice saying they unsubscribed, right? So on that case, before I like just put them on something else automatically, I just reached out, said, hey, you unsubscribed. Was it just for the Santa event, or did you mean to unsubscribe from everything I'm sending you? Or like neighborhood reports, right? Like I've had people who were getting a report about their neighborhood, they wanted it initially, and then they've moved or whatever, and they'll unsubscribe,
Mhm.
but then they still want to be invited to my events or whatever. So if
Yeah.
it's someone that you know and you're in, this is where relationships
Yeah,
come
That's a
in.
good point.
So if it's someone that you know and you're in relationship and they unsubscribe, like, I think it's worth a conversation. I probably wouldn't email them because they've unsubscribed from email communication. I would just pick up the phone and give them a quick call and say, hey, I just wanted to make sure, I always want to make sure I'm providing you with value. and that I'm doing it in the way that you want to be contacted. So when you unsubscribed, did you want to unsubscribe from everything? Was it the event specifically? Was it a neighborhood report? Like, I'll dig a little bit deeper, because sometimes it's just like, oh, we're just not buying a house for a while, so I don't need the neighborhood reports anymore. Okay, cool. Would you still be okay if I sent you my newsletters? Because people almost never unsubscribe to my newsletter, almost never. It's always like, they didn't give a crap about Santa, they're not coming, they want to unsubscribe. Well, did you want to unsubscribe from everything? Just that one event, right? So I think sometimes it warrants a conversation.
Yeah.
But it's gonna depend on how well you know your client. Like I've had a sibling unsubscribe and they're like, oh, well, I already signed up for it, so I just didn't want to get the emails about it anymore. 'Cause some people are like, I mean, if there's an email I get and I don't want to, I just delete it, but. And so like that example with my brother,
Right.
I just resubscribed him to something else. I was like, okay, noted, you signed up for Santa, you're coming. And then in that case, I didn't have a conversation, but most of the time you could.
It's probably a little different with your brother.
A little
Yeah.
bit,
Yeah,
And but you're,
bound to talk.
the way you're saying it depends on the relationship is probably super important to keep in mind.
Look, that's just a Facebook lead that had come in. It's a Facebook lead. I've tried to call them. I've emailed them a bunch of times. They haven't responded to anything and they unsubscribed. They're unsubscribed from everything. I'm not calling them. They're not getting invited to anything. They're unsubscribed.
Yeah, and I was talking more about the new lead. I said, if I get a new lead, I put
Yeah.
them in. If they immediately unsubscribe, then I don't worry about it. But yeah, if I'm in dialogue with them or I'm in conversation with them, yeah, then I'm gonna call them and say, hey, did you just unsubscribe from just that? Or do you really not want to have,
Yeah.
are we looking at a restraining order? How serious is this? And so I
And then I show them
I do
cookies
ask
they
that.
say restraining order.
Yeah.
Just kidding. Not a stop.
Already inside their house.
I just sit outside the house in my car.
Yeah. Put a for sale sign in the front yard. All right, I promised we get out of here on time, so we gotta move. So 36 Touch program is awesome. It's in command. That's a great reason to join Keller Williams. The other thing is make sure that you're contacting them through the socials, linking up with them socially so you can see what they're about, where they're vacationing, what activities they like, all that stuff. Birthdays, very important. Who doesn't like to be recognized on their birthday? I always ask, I have a buyer questionnaire, and on the buyer questionnaire or listing questionnaire, it asks for their birthdays. It asks for their anniversary. I want to be mindful of those situations. Children's names, I'm horrible with names. I have to write them down, and I have to associate them with something. Pets, I love the pet comment. I'm big on Christmas cards. I've been doing Christmas cards every year for 34 years. I handwrite every one of my Christmas cards and hand address my Christmas cards. It takes me 35 days to do it, and I do it in my spare time. But I get 1 to 2 deals every year out of it. So it's $15,000 to $30,000 just to send out Christmas cards. I always get somebody saying, gosh, thank you for your Christmas card. You know what, I was gonna call you anyway, but it's a, what's the word? It's a catalyst for business. It's also it's a great time of year, love, all that good stuff, love, joy, and peace on earth. So, it fits the time of year. Yeah, so that's pretty much it. We'll just wrap up by, the office has 4 events a year, 4 events that we put together for you as agents, and they have a minimal cost. I mean, it's shocking how little money they cost. The next one coming up is our Easter egg hunt, right?
Yeah.
And that's when, March?
Is there a specific calendar for those? Like,
Yes.
okay.
Seeing some advertising about the Easter egg bunch.
Easter is weird this year. Yeah, weird. It's later.
Well, I don't know. Either way, you'll get notices about it. So essentially, these are events you would invite your client to. So it's a great way for you to have a touch to reach out to people, especially as a newer agent. It's a really easy invite. Now you may think like, oh,
Yeah.
these people don't care about the Easter egg hunt. Great. Who else can they invite? Or, but there's 4 events. I suggest you participate in them. There's no reason really not to. So there's an Easter egg hunt every year. There's a summer event, there's a fall event, and then we always do pictures with Santa.
Yeah, it's awesome. I mean, it's usually what, about $150 per agent?
Or less.
Yeah, or less, depending on what we're doing. You can invite X number of guests based on space availability. The Easter egg hunt's great because we do it at a park, so we can have thousands of people show up. I think we had last year, 5,000 or something like that.
Quite 5:30 lot.
It's crazy. And we asked you guys if you're gonna participate to help with some of the setup and stuff like that, but we as staff do a lot of that for you. We secure the venue, we have raffle drawings, we have food, we have prizes, we have activities for the kids. I mean, it really makes for a great event and makes you look good. And it doesn't cost much money, so. I'm here for you. If you have any questions about the business, if you have any questions about compliance, paperwork, that kind of stuff, reach out to me. I'm here to keep you out of jail. Nobody wants to go to jail,
Nobody wants that.
you know? We have a pretty good record so far. I think we've only had 1 or 2 go to jail. So that's pretty good.
So.
That's a joke.
We maybe have had, you know, people get in trouble, but not any fault of
Yeah.
our own.
Yeah, they've gone rogue. What do you do? You know? We try to defend them a little bit and whatever, but. Okay, thanks for being here. You guys are awesome.
Thanks, friends. Hey, any questions, any ahas, any wrap ups, anybody online? I'm gonna end our call or Zoom. I'm not gonna end Zoom.
Really?
It has to be 35 days minimum.
Walk around.
I think I'm turning up any cards, so I'm gonna like, go shake my hand.
I had one client text me and said, because I signed Ken, and he said, he texted me a picture of it, he goes, is this you? I'm like, dude, it has my name on it. Hello? Keller Williams, yes, it's me, but.
So good.
I still come to the Picks with Santa.
Yeah.
Yeah, Neil was my realtor. I'm still coming to it. I know my kids love it.
Yeah, that's great, yeah.
Well, yeah, you know, it's awesome. You know, no less than a car too. So
So my daughter does.
oh, no way. That's awesome. Cool.